This is Michael Clara. Welcome to my blog, Local School Boards Can Make a Difference. This is part 3 of a going over the school lunch fiasco, and the subtitle of this one is called The Bully Culture. And what I want to do, and let me show you this interesting cartoon that came out in the Salt Lake Tribune that I believe personifies exactly what we've been going through over the last couple of weeks. And I really want to do a shout out and thank the parents of Uinta for their passion and their tenacity. I appreciate the fact that they have addressed this in the manner that they have. And unfortunately, they've had to, make this a public issue, because when they initially went to the administration to try to get this solved, they were rebuffed. And this is typical of how this administration on the district level handles situations like this, because they think that they're going to wear people out. And clearly that didn't happen with this group of parents. So my hat is off to them. The story broke on January 29th. The Salt Lake Tribune broke this story, and it went nationwide. And then later that day, the KSL covered the story. And then one of the things that I really admire and I'm impressed about the Uinta parents is that they have addressed every aspect of this issue. As parents, they protected their children, as all parents should, and they took care of that immediate problem. Then they started looking at the policy across the district to ensure that this never happens to other children. And they brought to bear significant pressure to the district. And they have invested a lot of time and energy into this issue that unfortunately, they had to do it. And it's not, I guess what I want to say is it shouldn't be needed. I mean, they elected, members to the Board of Education to take care of these types of issues, and these parents have had to come in and literally do the job of the elected officials and call them out at every step. The reaction to this was actually almost just as bad as what actually occurred. If in this case now, they were addressing the fact that the parents are here addressing the fact that the school district appears to now be blaming the cafeteria lady. And the parents are in the process of addressing this particular part of it too. So I want to go into the school board meeting that happened this week and just show the part where I had brought up about, that we're having a culture here problem in our particular district. And then we'll go from there. Can I address one other
Yes,
we've addressed that this policy issue. The other thing that I see, that's happening is just that I, in the year that I've been on the board, I've had many employees talk to me in tears, feel that this whole district is just under a siege mentality for a number of the employees, and that they feel that so when this incident is going on, there's this culture there then that even however wrong that is, you can't even stop it, even though you're an employee. So we have, reports that an employee are in tears having to participate in something that they think is clearly wrong. And I think that starts at the top. And one example I offer, to demonstrate where I think this starts is, Mikhail, I got a couple of reports from 2 different principals saying that in the GAM meeting, the administrators meeting in November, that you said words to the effect that you have board members telling you things, but you don't believe what the board members are telling you, and then you order them to report any conversations they have with board members. And I don't know how accurate, they related that, but these are 2 principals, and they feel intimidated by that and feel that they're not supposed to talk to board members, or, if they do. So I think it's that kind of stuff that breeds this culture where things like this can happen and nobody can stop it, even while it's in process.
And part of this question asked that you can we confine this discussion to the discussion of the child nutrition?
That is. I think we're not connecting the dots. That's why as a policymaker I'm helping.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that is your belief.
But excuse me, Heather.
You can dismiss it if you want, but that's not. I'm representing my people from my neighborhood, and that's what they're concerned with. Hold on a second, Heather. You have this tendency to just belittle what I say, and I ask that you would respect what I'm saying. And you want to, Doug did it at the other meeting where, okay, that's your reality, let's just move on. And I'm just telling you, that's the kind of stuff that'll get you in trouble, and that continues to get us in trouble, because that kind of attitude then is perpetuated throughout this organization.
And I do want to add to Michael's, because one of the things, I got a lot of emails, obviously, and I kept responding. To me, this is, yes, it was an issue with taking food away from children, which was insane. But to me, it is this bullying mentality that we do have in this. I mean, I know as a board, when we sit here, everything is rosy, and we hear these wonderful reports in schools. But I've been in the school district in Salt Lake City. I was bullied by administrators. I know plenty of teachers that have been bullied. I think teachers are bullied today as high school teachers who had an appeal on their extended day and they still have to work on the extended day. I think those are all bullying in situation. And I think this lady who works in the cafeteria, to me, the reason she did it was because of she felt bullied. Yes. And I just think there is something to this. I mean, you can dismiss it and you can say this isn't part of it, but there is some mentality in bullying in this district, because I hear it all the time from teachers. I was bullied as a teacher. I feel personally in this meeting I have been bullied. So, I mean, I just do not think that we can say that what happened here, I'm sure that, it's lovely. I appreciate you taking the responsibility. I really do, because I know this is very difficult, because I know this wasn't your intent. But somehow, there was some part of this that somebody thought, well, I have to do this, and this was a reaction. And I just, I don't agree with, I understand we don't want to talk about one thing, they're all not connected, but I do think the bigger conversation is something is wrong when anybody even thinks this is okay. And the reason they thought it was okay, because there is this overall feeling somehow that we're not working from the bottom up, we're working from a top-down system. And I think that is the flaw in our district in the last 10 or 15 years.
Amen.
The article the next day in the Salt Lake Tribune was a front page article, and it was titled Lunch Scandal, Slip or Culture? And the answer to that is both. And as you saw, Rosemary and I were able to get that point across to the consternation of the other board members there. We were able to make that point that it's a culture issue. And so, and that's what I want to, kind of just finish up on this podcast with this culture issue and give another example outside of this lunch scandal, and then maybe on another podcast talk about this slip a little more. But another interesting thing in the City Weekly, Kathy Bealey wrote, and this is in the City Weekly, those of us that are from Salt Lake, there's hit and misses, and then no lunch for you. And Kathy Bealey is a really good friend of Heather Bennett's, so it just concerns me a bit, her take on this. And she says that no lunch for you, agreed. Don't blame the hapless lunch ladies, the weeping women who wrenched trays of food from unsuspecting children at Uinta Elementary. So anyways, I take a bit exception to that description of events. She goes on, it likely wasn't their fault that Salt Lake School District was operating on a backward policy that allowed kids to go through a lunch line only to discover that their parents hadn't paid their bills. But consider this, civil disobedience. Is there no sense of morality, of conscience, that goes beyond corporate policy? Isn't this how we find ourselves in a totalitarian society? We don't ask questions. We don't disobey. We just keep our heads down and do our jobs, not willing to stand for something if it means we lose our jobs. Instead, these lunch ladies lost their purpose to serve and help kids. So I can't even read this with a straight face because, she talks about conscience. Well, clearly they had conscience because they were crying and weeping at having to do this. But the other thing and then this whole thing about standing up, I do that all the time as an elected official. Not that they can fire me, but it's brutal. The reaction that I get in trying to change things, clearly I'm not going to have the votes in this current setup of school board to make any changes or improvements, and I'm okay with that. But I'm not okay with being mistreated and being belittled and this whole thing about, then they go out in the community and demonize me and villainize me just for doing what Kathy Beeley, who's a friend of Heather Bennett, is saying here. This is just a bit. And I believe that Kathy knows what's going on, what's happening in the school district, yet she tries to pin all this on the lunch lady, which is just so bizarre. So what Kathy is saying is this lady here is supposed to lose her job in order to make a point to these guys over here. That makes no sense to me whatsoever. I want to switch gears here and give you another example of why what Kathy Beeley is suggesting really makes no sense to me. We had an incident. I just got this email here, January 29, 2014, from the attorney for the school district, John Robson. And what he's asking me for, he's going back to an incident that happened a while back, and let me explain. So let's just hold on to this. That I get this letter last week, a few days ago, and let me explain where this is coming from. And so I'm shifting gears from the lunchroom issue because I want to make a point about the type of bullying that goes on and what happens when you try to stand up. And to Kathy Beeley, it's not that easy, especially for an employee that's on the front lines of this issue. I think it's unfair to try to point out that somehow this woman failed again, which is crazy when I believe that she was being subjected to the type of bullying that happens on the adult level in this district, and it's encouraged.
I would also point out that we have lots of ways in our system, on our website, to report if you think there is abuse.
Yes.
If you think funds are being misspent or misappropriated, we have a specific way to do it on the website. We have lots of ways to do it within the system. And that's, I guess, Mr. Clara, what I would suggest. If you've got informants that have concerns, there are ways to report that.
I filed a Title I complaint with Lori Lacey today. Yesterday. So I filed the complaint. These are employees that claim that they'll be retaliated if they bring it up. So they don't bring it up, and then
But
they
there's
tell me.
multiple ways for them to do that.
And I'm one of them. And why not? I'm going to vote on a budget. It's my responsibility to make sure that we're being responsible.
Okay, but you also have to recognize that what we vote on is the budget, which appropriates dollars appropriately.
Right.
And if you think that budget is being violated by misspending or moving money around,
I do.
That isn't actually a budget discussion. If it's budgeted appropriately, then it's budgeted appropriately. If you think individuals are taking the money and spending it, despite the audits that we have, despite the very thoughtful, that's not really the budget. That's a different issue. That's all I'm saying, Michael. Right. So
you can approve the budget, but allege graft or theft, but that's different than saying this is, as the representative of the taxpayers, this is how we want the money spent.
Right.
That's
right. I don't see the difference. Right. I mean, if I vote on a budget, it's going to be because
the difference if you're on the Board of Education.
Why?
If you want to be a good board member, you need to see the difference.
Okay, well, that's your value judgment, Doug, and I think we have a different value.
So, you know what, let's move on. I just want to share that you can make a report on our website about a misappropriation. You can also go through the state auditor, and we've been contacted by them before, and they do an investigation and they make a report. So there are
All right, so I just want to I should have set this up a little better, but what happened was clearly, we're at this board meeting on May 7th, and I was questioning, we were going through the budget process. I'm questioning some budget issues. And you'll see this constant, if you follow the board meetings, they're always trying to impose their value judgment on me and on Rosemary, and even to the point of telling us how we're supposed to ask questions. And you see the kind of the foolishness that's going on here. When I report in this meeting that I've been told by employees that there is some improprieties going on with Title I money, then the vice president refers to them as informants. And it's kind of always this constant belittling of, anything like that if you're questioning anything, because everything seems to revolve around these two. It's almost like, and I just can't think of another example, and I don't mean to be demeaning, but it's like a pack of dogs, and these are the alpha male and alpha female, and then the rest of the pack will defend everything about these two, even if you're just asking a budget question. And even in this particular case, they act like a budget. They don't want to talk about expenditures. And in my mind, a budget has two parts. And the revenue and expenditures, but in their mind, they're going to, lecture me about I'm not supposed to look at the expenditure side of a budget. So, and then, ironically, Doug of all people is going to try to teach me how to be a good board member, which is very bizarre. So just keep in mind that Janet Roberts, who's a business administrator, the same person right here, she tells me, if you have a question, file it with the state auditor. So hold on to that thought. And then let me just go over one more meeting that we went through the 2 weeks after this, with the budget process, which is really interesting because in the meeting, in 2 weeks after this, May 7th, when I was asking questions, Janet actually wouldn't answer any of the questions because she didn't have her paperwork in front of her. And because I didn't call her before, even though in this meeting towards the end, she has a PowerPoint slide that she showed us saying that bring your questions to the next meeting. So it's just this constant, I don't know if it's ineptness or just games that they're playing, but it's just a very, very dysfunctional organization because of the leadership and lack of vision that's provided by these two people.
That's correct.
All right, then I need to see more details to that because it doesn't make it, even this explanation falls short for me because, we're being told that failure to fully fund growth and in order to require not to cut this program, and you're quoting a $220,000 cut in this program, which I'm not seeing that cut at all. And then, when I look at our own budget, when you look at the revenue side of our budget, it looks like we have over $500,000 increase in state money from last year to this year. So, and we had a drop according to this part of our budget. We had a 230 student drop in students. So we wouldn't expect any growth anyways because we had quite the opposite. But so I'm just not seeing that if we dropped in 230 students, but we got an increase of state money this year, I don't understand then how state programs are in jeopardy. So what ends up happening during the budget process last year, I filed a complaint, a 6-page complaint with the auditor's office. And if you recall in that May 7th meeting, Janet told me to. She said, you can file a complaint with the auditor's office. So there were a number of issues that I brought up to the attention of the auditor, the Title I funding. And then, there was a lot of and I didn't, name all of them in this complaint, but just discrepancies and conflicting information that the business manager was giving us. And as you saw just in the last clip, she couldn't either. She wasn't willing to, or she really just didn't know the answers to the questions I was asking. And then, of course, you'd have to see the whole meeting, that one and the one before, and then the other board members are just getting indignant and upset. And 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 saying, literally upset that I'm asking questions, because over the decade average of service that they have been on the board, I guess they've never asked questions. And so because it's very foreign to them that I was asking questions. So what's interesting, again, I need to make a point here that I filed this complaint as an elected official on behalf of a couple of the complaints that employees had given me. You saw that in that May 7th meeting, they were chiding me for receiving complaints from employees. And there's actually state law that says that employees can indeed report waste or fraud to the elected member of the government body. And the board president and vice president and Doug acted like, that can't be happening. You shouldn't be doing that, that these employees should be going through other means and not through me. And indeed, you hear the vice president referring to them as informants. Well, I did this, at any rate. And then here comes the bully culture. Even though you hear publicly the business administrator telling me, yeah, file with the auditor's office. Well, their reaction to that is they get the attorney to now file a grammar request. And he wants, supposedly on behalf of the board, which I don't recall a board meeting where we ever asked him to do that now he wants copies of the complaint. And the complaint is, initiates an investigation. And so what's been happening since I filed this complaint, they bring it up every other meeting just about, and like they're going to shame me or, make me feel bad because I filed this complaint, which I don't. They're the ones in the first instance would not answer questions, would not give me information that I asked for, and would give me conflicting information, and then couldn't answer the questions that I had. So as a consequence, I voted against, the raising taxes last year, because it made no sense to me, what they were saying half the time, and then they couldn't clarify it. So here they are now. We're going to go to one more meeting on July 9th, but the superintendent's explaining to us in the open meeting, and we were up at Snowbird for the annual retreat of the board, which I think that was a waste of money, but that's another whole topic. But here's what happened in that meeting. And Mikkel is just telling us that the grammar request was denied by the auditor's office.
The other items, just an FYI, as I know you're aware, we were told somewhat vaguely by Mr. Clara that he had submitted a complaint to the state auditor's office. And part of that complaint was, I think someone said it was posted on a blog or somewhere, so we made a grammar request to get a copy of the complaint, since we weren't getting one from Mr. Clara. And so John Robson, on your behalf, at your request, wrote a letter to the state auditor asking for anything that would relate to us back for a couple of years so we could be aware of any complaints that have been filed and what they've done with them. And this is their initial response, that they're aware of 3 records that they have that would be responsive to the request, and we're believing that the 3rd bullet point is the one in question. And John is now following up and appealing, saying that if the author is posting it in a public location, it ought to be a public document and it ought to be forthcoming. So we'll see what happens from there. So that's just a heads up on that as well.
You're keeping track of the time and expense it takes to do it.
We
should keep track too of the 52% of the dropouts, Laurel, of Hispanic students too, and what's happening to them in their lives too.
Well, okay.
Because that's what I'm trying to address, and you always want to bring it down to
Ms. Claire, we'll continue with the meeting if you'll just
Yeah, let's go
let us
ahead
know.
and-
Well, no, I'd like to respond to that. She wants to bring it down to physical things, but I'm just trying to say that we're talking about people's lives, and that's what's important.
So that was Laurel Young, this same person right here, and she's the one that, so let's keep track of the expense and the time that this is taking. And clearly, why are we expending this kind of time and energy on this when all they had to do was answer questions? But, you have a superintendent and a business administrator that literally run the place and feel like the board works for them, and they don't owe an explanation to an elected official as to who has responsibility by state law for the budget and how the money is expended, but they don't want to give me any explanation when I ask for it. So that's why they find themselves this complaint that I filed with the auditor's office. And so now here is the letter that they gave us where the auditor is denying their grammar request because he says that this is under investigation. Then they go get the attorney to appeal. And so my concern is, why all this fixation on a complaint that's under investigation? Let it run its course. And then you can find out at the end of the audit, investigation, what the outcome is. But they were fixated on this, even though, again, remember, it was a business administrator that told me to go file the complaint. So their words, I guess their words don't mean anything, or they're just idle words, or they didn't think I was going to follow through with it. And I think they've learned that I will. So they need to be careful on what their suggestions are. And because this one came to bite them, because now they regret that, because I didn't even know you could file a complaint with the state auditor's office until the business administrator told me, and now they're upset about it and freaking out and want to get a copy of it before the investigation is done. So here, he appeals it. Then the auditor himself, John Dougal, denies the appeal, and they just keep going. So at one point, I realized, when they brought it up in another meeting, I went ahead and had a copy of it and gave it to, because now we're in September, and I'm thinking, okay, part of my concern early on, not giving them a copy of it, because they will actually change. I've seen them falsify documents. They will change documents, agendas, and things of that nature, and violate the Open Meetings Act. So, and if anybody wants to know the detail, I can substantiate that. I'm not just making accusations, false accusations. So by September, I figured, well, the auditor's office has had to have been far along in this investigation that, I need to just give them a copy of the complaint, which I did. And then what ends up happening now, the auditor now gives them a copy of the complaint, because I CC the auditor's office, and I said, okay, I'm giving them a copy of the complaint. Now the auditor says, okay, we're going to give you his complaint now. And then that still doesn't satisfy them. So they have to bring it up again, in more meetings, and then now send me a letter saying that, now they want the supporting documentation. And, again, the investigation is not done. And it's just, again, odd that, this attorney gets paid $300 an hour, that they're expending this kind of money, and then the superintendent, in his duplicitous way, claims that the board is the one that has this attorney doing that, which I don't recall us ever voting or ever asking him to do that. And again, it doesn't make sense that while an audit is in progress, they're asking for a copy of it. Now, keep in mind, this is the same group of people, Mikkel, that won't give the public an audit. This just came out February 4th, and he won't. There's an audit that was done on the West Athletic program. A parent wanted a copy of it. I want a copy of it, but he will not give it to the public. So he gave it to the board in a closed door session, which I think is not legal. So anyway, so that's under review right now. But so that's, kind of the mentality that we're dealing with, that you have this organization that's presided over by a very, very dysfunctional bureaucracy, and it's going to continue, to harm all that come in contact with it. I've seen this over and over again, that people are not well served. This is a public school. This is, should be run by elected officials, and you have a bureaucracy that has just taken over and somehow charmed the majority of the school board, where they feel that they're obligated to these two here. And until changes are made, I don't see, that's the overarching problem here, is that, in these negative instances or experiences that we're having throughout the district are going to continue. And until we make some changes, with this organization, through the democratic process. So that's the end of this podcast. Sorry that it went so long, but if you want more information, feel free to go to my blog, michaelclara.com. Thank you.